have it.
Hello and welcome to the program. I am Ekene Ndulue. Again, we begin this week with proceedings on the floor of the Senate. President Muhammadu Buhari has written to the Senate seeking the reimbursement of 6.6 billion naira to Plateau State and 3.8 billion to Borno State for federal government road projects executed. The president also sought Senate consideration of the Nigerian Data Protection Bill and the Nigerian Police Force College and Training School Establishment Bills. Here are highlights of these and other deliberations at plenary during the week.
67 days to the end of the Ninth Assembly. The legislators are putting finishing touches to pending issues, but also paying considerable attention to new ones. Plenary took off with 4 executive communications, which include reimbursement of funds to Plateau and Borno states.
That the approval by FEC was subsequent to the recommendation of an interministerial committee. The committee reviewed the documents submitted and carried out physical inspections and verification of the projects in the respective states before making its recommendation to FEC.
The president also sought the confirmation of Abdul Abubakar for reappointment as non-executive director of the Central Bank of Nigeria for a second and final term. Senate rescinded its decision on the 2016-2018 federal government external borrowing plan and changed the financier from China Exim Bank to China Development Bank and approved the conditions provided in the harmonized term sheet.
Communication from the Federal Ministry of Finance requesting approval of the modifications to the financing proposal for the Nigerian Railway Modernization Project, that is Kaduna to Kano segment.
The issue is that was any disbursement made out of this $22.7 million? We need to know.
It approved the conference report on the Nigeria Peace Corps Bill and the report of its Committee on Power, which carried out investigative hearing on the ongoing bid to concession the 700 megawatt Zungeru hydroelectric power plant, which recommended the suspension of the bid process till after the completion of the project.
The BP be advised to keep to the commitment made before the committee to concession the power plant only after it has been completed, tested and commissioned.
The Broadcasting Practitioners Establishment Bill passed first reading. Senate urged the federal government to take over and ensure the burial of former President of the Senate, Joseph Wayas, who died in November 2021, as soon as possible and to immortalize him. It also paid tribute to the wife of the Chief Whip of the Senate, Ifeoma Kalu, who died over the weekend.
The Senate in the week passed the bill that seeks to establish the Nigerian Minerals Development Corporation with a view to checkmating illegal mining activities in the Nigerian solid minerals sector.
Will unbundle the solid mineral sector to enhance more purposeful execution of the upstream, midstream, and downstream sectors in order to facilitate participation by major investors.
Very significant and important legislation that will support our mining sector. The mining sector in Nigeria is supposed to contribute as much as probably 30% of our GDP.
And the Senate, in an effort to consolidate on gains in the fight against corruption, sought the views of experts and members of the public as it works towards amending the EFCC Act.
The focus of the amendment to the Principal Act of the EFCC is to alter the requirements for the appointment of its chairman and security of tenure in line with the global best practices.
He is seeking to strengthen this important mechanism for fighting corruption. We are growing our ability to detect, prosecute, and deter, which are the ideal processes for fighting this malaise.
The purpose of this public hearing is to provide an open forum for all stakeholders to express their views and opinions on the proposed amendment.
It is a simple amendment of the two sections which is intended to bring about a fundamental impact on professionalization of the Commission and guarantee the safety and security of tenure for the headship of the Commission.
Amendments sought in the Principal Act received the support of similar agencies with EFCC and other concerned bodies.
Because for you to fight corruption as a chairman of EFCC, you have two fights before you. The fight against corruption itself generally, and the fight against corruption fighting back.
If the appointment of the chairman must be confirmed by the Senate, then its removal too must be confirmed as well by the Senate. So we are totally in support, sir.
When the amendment finally becomes Act of Parliament, appointment of future EFCC chairman will be limited to the staff of the Commission from the rank of Assistant Commander.
Now, there are just 2 months till the inauguration of the 10th National Assembly, and ahead of this, some legislators assess the 9th Senate and look forward to how the incoming legislature will conduct its affairs.
The 9th Senate, the 9th National Assembly, is gradually winding down. Give us your general assessment of how they've performed over the last 4 years.
Well, my personal opinion, and with all due modesty and no prejudice to the members of the National Assembly, I feel that they could have done much better. For one thing, they didn't question any of the loans. We are in so much debt, and we have nothing to show for it, at least very little to show for it. And I would have expected that when the first loan was granted, before more and more is granted, they would have then audited what was done with the previous loans. And they were primarily rubber stamp. I don't think they served the interests of the people as much as they could have. That notwithstanding, maybe they had issues and constraints that I'm not aware of.
Generally, different legislatures have their identities. You alluded to it, that the 9th Senate has been tagged or labeled a rubber stamp. The 8th Senate was regarded as being more combative. What are you expecting from the 10th Senate in terms of its relationship with the executive?
Not necessarily combative, but certainly interrogative is a better word, the way I see it. I think that the 10th Assembly will be more focused on the needs of the people, a little bit more than this, not a little bit more, maybe a lot more than this particular assembly, because there are at least 72 new senators in the Senate, and if I'm correct, maybe only 50 out of all the members of the House of Assembly are old members. Everybody else is new. So I would think that we are more in touch with the people. I would say that I'm certainly, and I've spoken to the other, we have a feel for the pulse of the people and the country, and therefore we know that the country is in a very bad place. Therefore, we know that they're not as complacent as they used to be. They're angry, and therefore are going to hold us more accountable than they used to. You get messages like, we're watching you guys, things that they're not as reverent as they used to be. In fact, they're more irreverent now. It's like, we elected you to do certain things and you must do them. That is, represent us well. So I think that this time we're going to be more focused on the people. I think the caucuses will be more in terms of interests of the people than party interests. Because even now we've started our little senatorial groups, and you can see that we're not very focused on parties. We're focused on zones, we're focused on an area, we're focused on the people generally, but not so much our parties. Party interests they have to align with people interests.
We're going to once again be seeing a huge turnover of legislators once the 10th National Assembly comes into being.
Mm-hmm.
This has been regarded as not too a good thing for the growth of the legislature in terms of its impact.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say about this?
I do not think they will be less effective, considering those that have been there have gotten too comfortable. They've lost touch with the people. So in a way, I think it's good.
Okay.
It's good because everybody's coming, at least the new ones are coming in very aware of why are we here. A lot more than when you had a lot of former governors, everybody's just there for the sake of being there. You didn't see much coming out of it. So I think it is a good thing. Until we stabilize as a nation, we are not going to be having the 3 terms, 4 terms. Even when we do, how effective are they for being there so long?
We've seen a significant decline in female representation in the legislature in terms of this incoming 10th Senate. We're going to be having 3 female legislators in the Senate, yourself being one of them. How would you assess this situation, and what would you attribute this decline to in regards to having 9 senators in the 9th Senate, the outgoing Senate, and this time around it's going to be 3 senators that are female?
Obviously, I mean, it goes without saying that women participation has dropped greatly in the last 8 years. First of all, I think this particular Federal Executive Council had probably the least number of women. And then now, the National Assembly, going into the 10th Assembly, we have even much less. But it's not that women are not participating. The parties are not focused on the fact that women are 50% of the population, and therefore, as a nation, for us to develop properly, we have to carry along 50% of our population. There's just no question about it. And going forward, I think, like everything else in Nigeria, we never comply unless it's mandatory. And that's the truth. In the parties, whenever delegates are being picked, let's say sometimes they would say 3 delegates per ward. Before, they used to bring out all men, all over. And then the parties now said, oh, 3 delegates, but one must be female. And once they did that, then it wasn't a question of choice. You had to have a woman among the 3 for compliance. And until we do something like that, we are not going to see. I won't be surprised if nothing is done. The next assembly might be no women. But I hope we won't get to that. I am sure that the few men I've spoken to in the National Assembly are quite embarrassed by the situation. And I think as a nation, we are all a little bit embarrassed by it. We are supposed to be the leaders of Africa. And look at how well the other countries are doing in terms of, look at Rwanda, look at Senegal, look at South Africa. And so I think something needs to be done. And that is legislation.
Legislation?
Oh, yes. If a country like Indonesia, even Rwanda, and possibly Burundi, they've legislated their 35%. And then what a lot of countries have found is that when they put the minimum in, women excel, they do so well that the next time they bring them more and more and more. And so the fact that in some countries they're like 60% is out of choice, not because of legislation. Legislation was what opened the door to, in FCT, I have personally benefited from the fact that there was a female senator long time ago before me. She actually introduced me to FCT politics. And she performed so well that it gave women a sort of positive sheen. So there are places I go to campaign and they say, yeah, we're going to vote for you because women are better, they're kinder, they pay more attention, they keep their promises, they do this. And they show me some of the things she did, and that was a very, very long time ago. So her footprints are still here, even though she was senator from 1999 to 2003. So as time, and if I perform, which I know I will, as well as she did or even better, then it opens the door for people, to the electorate, to realize that, you know, we're not getting less when we vote in women, we're actually getting more.
I want to congratulate the leadership of the present National Assembly that they did well and are doing well. I want to urge them that there is a process we normally adopt, what we call legislative reciprocity, where bills of a certain nature, which are urgent, which have been passed by one chamber and then not considered by the other, you know, is put into a list, and the extent, each chamber extends to the other what we call legislative reciprocity. They should consider that in bills that are of the nature we've described, because they do not have enough time to consider most of the bills for concurrence and then to agree. Because for those, some of those bills to go back when the legislature is dissolved about the 13th of June, it will be very unfair to the process of the legislation and unfair to the public purse from which these bills were considered. I also want that as we're thinking of inaugurating the incoming National Assembly, I will urge the APC leadership, the President-elect and the Vice President-elect, to consider the appropriate timing to have a relationship with the members-elect. First, with the returning members, second, with the incoming members, and third, with three of them, with the two coming together in the third rung of the meeting to agree on the offices and the balancing it should go to make sure that the polity is balanced and that we do not run into the 2015 accident in which the leadership emerged in a manner emerged against the run of play. As advisor to the National Assembly, as advisor to the President and National Assembly, I remember that we worked very closely with Adams Oshomole as then chairman of the APC in working, and on the day of working on these matters at Udi Street, the party secretariat, night visits to the appropriate persons, mobilizing the governors of the respective states, mobilizing the opinion of the respective zones to be able to agree on zoning of offices, and of course ensuring that the legislative leadership emerges in a manner that allows cohesion of the membership and also in a manner that allows the different parts of the country to feel a sense of belonging. This is a very great challenge to the incoming administration, a challenge on ground that they had the first accident when APC came in. We've succeeded to endure APC to succeed first and second, and this is going to be the third administration of APC. In the third administration of APC, they should avoid the accident of the first administration in terms of legislative composition.
All right, and your expectations for the incoming legislature, and we are also seeing a high turnover yet again.
Yes, I think this is the worst, this is the highest rate of turnover of the legislature. And I'm praying that this will be like the beginning of a new legislature. Legislature that will have confidence of the public. That they will have a confidence that we have to return you. We'll have to move away from what appears to be that governors, when they want to retire, finish, they will have to come as a retirement home. Or people, when you want to do favor to somebody, you have to send him to the legislature. The legislature is the most cerebral, the most intellectual, the number one arm of government. And I repeat, the legislature is the number one arm of government. The second arm of government is the executive. The third arm of government is the judiciary. The fourth arm of government is the press. Now, it is not for naught that the Constitution made it the number one arm of government and says, we the people. That is where the people are. So we should come with the highest level of intellect. And the legislators who have come should know that there is one thing I've always said. It is the laws that you make that a full panel of the Supreme Court will sit and say, what was the intendment of the legislature? So if you know that it is that law that the Federal High Court, the High Court of the State, the Court of Appeal, the respective courts known to the Constitution, Court of Record, the Court of Appeal will sit in a 3-man panel and in a full bench 5-man panel of justices of the appeal court to find out what you said, what you meant. I think the legislators coming should take themselves very seriously. Take the legislative work very seriously, because we're having challenge of the Electoral Act, challenge of interpretation, because of some details which were missed at a certain point. We're even having challenge on the street, people protesting that INEC should not have done this, should not have done this, because some details were not given in the course of making the Electoral Act. I apologize if I offend the legislators, but even the courts have noted the details that were not attended to, and they say that their hands are tied. So this should be a guide to the incoming legislators, that they are not coming for a cum-chop. They are not coming for a show. They should know that they don't have immunity. It is not a place to hide yourselves, from prosecution, But one of the things that I'm happy about, and I know this is going to be very costly for me, I'm very happy that very many governors have lost election to the Senate. Because when the governors come to the Senate, they still sometimes carry themselves as lords and gods. They still behave as if they still enjoy immunity. They still behave as if they have all the commissioners to answer their questions. They still behave as if some 7 people should carry their bag into the chamber. They still behave as if they should have some 53 cars driving and following them in the convoy. I'm very happy that they have lost election. I'm very, very happy. Let the legislature reinvent itself again and be the legislature that was headed by Gali Umana Abba and Dr. Okadigbo Chuba, the Oyi of Oyi. Let the legislature reinvent itself again. Thank you.
That concludes this week's edition of Senate 109. Thanks for your time. You can also watch these and other editions of this program and others online via our NTA YouTube channel. Scroll to NTA News and click on videos. I am Ekene Ndulue. Bye for now.